It's 8 o'clock.
Good morning. This is Northern Light for Thursday, October 12th. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe.
As North Country colleges face declining student enrollments, we'll hear how Jefferson County Community College is trying to right-size their campus.
This is trying to set up a more streamlined structure so that we don't have a lot of that chaos when somebody leaves, not knowing where to report to.
We'll hear from two painters who were out working in plein air last week in the Adirondacks.
So that's where I'm at now. I'm laying some color in. And I like to mix a little bit of raw umber with my blue to gray it up a little bit, just to cut the chroma a little bit so it's not so garish.
And we'll meet the textile artist whose work is currently on display in Lake George. Hannah Washburn hand sews freestanding sculptures out of reused clothing and fabric.
In a way, they're these self-portraits. They're kind of autobiographical, but I think there's also something that's, I hope, reflected back for the viewer.
All of that and more is coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us.
Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by St. Lawrence Health, whose affiliation with Rochester Regional Health means more patient access to specialty care. StLawrenceHealthSystem.org. And Gray & Gray & Associates, CPAs and accounting and financial services firm in Northern New York, with offices in Canton, Potsdam, and Spring Hill, Florida. GrayCPAS.com.
Good morning. I'm Amy Feiereisel. I'm a reporter here at North Country Public Radio, and I'm in this morning with Todd and Monica, getting to watch them work, to talk about NCPR's fall fundraiser. Now is the time to make a donation to keep North Country Public Radio, your local public radio station, strong. NCPR has been on the air and here for the North Country since 1955. Your gift will ensure that NCPR is on the air for many years to come. You can make a gift right now at ncpr.org/give or by calling us. We've got people waiting by the phones at 877-388-6277. There are lots of reasons people make a gift, and we love hearing your comments about why. Some people say they love the national and international news. Some say it's because of the locally hosted music shows. Some say it's because of the hyper local and regional news that they hear right here on Northern Light. Whatever your reason is, think about what it's worth to you to keep it around. Every gift of any amount makes a difference. It's the thousands of gifts together that make up the majority of NCPR's budget and keep us telling the stories of this very special place. Make your gift now at ncpr.org/give or give us a call. There are folks here waiting to talk to you at 877-388-6277. And thanks.
This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe. Declining student enrollments are hitting North Country colleges and universities hard. Last month, SUNY Potsdam officials announced major downsizing and layoffs after a 43% enrollment drop over the last decade. Jefferson Community College in Watertown is facing similar challenges, but it's taken a different approach to right-sizing a campus for fewer students. Catherine Wheeler reports.
Typically, community colleges see a boost in enrollment during hard economic times. People go back to school to try and advance their financial futures. But Jefferson Community College President Dan Dupe says that's not happening now.
We really haven't. I mean, that's not anything that is just JCC. That is nationwide. Community colleges haven't seen the increases that we would see during a time where there's high inflation, economic challenges. We just haven't seen it.
Unemployment has been low, so with more people working, fewer can go to college full-time. That's trouble for JCC. Its enrollment of full-time students has dropped 44% over the last decade. Dupe says more students are going part-time. That's reflected in JCC's overall total of students.
But if you look in that study, you'll see that our head count hasn't gone down at those same rates. So our head count's down in the 20% range. So that's when you're seeing a lot more people coming part-time versus coming full-time.
What has the faculty staff numbers looked like over that same time period?
We've been fortunate for the most part to do our right sizing via attrition. And we look at every year, okay, this is what we anticipate our student population to look like. This is what we anticipate our overall finances to look like at the end of the year. So can we fill these positions that are vacated? If we can't fill them, we don't fill them. We have to figure out how to shift the work to different areas or figure out what value does that work bring and can we still do that?
All that attrition caused another problem. When faculty and staff left their jobs, it wasn't even across all departments, leaving gaps in some academic areas and not others, in sort of an ad hoc chain of command.
A lot of that came due to how we were dealing with as people left and not refilling those roles, having a structure in which people were shifting who they were reporting to on a constant basis for the most part, because we did have a lot of movement during that time.
So Doopy commissioned an internal study to see what faculty and staff are thinking about the college's organizational structure, or lack thereof.
This is trying to set up a more streamlined structure so that we don't have a lot of that chaos when somebody leaves, not knowing where to report to. You'll still always have that. If somebody leaves, in the short run, you've got to figure out where people go. And I think that was a challenge, is that we just had a lot of that movement at one time.
The study showed that faculty and staff are concerned that the administration is too top-heavy and hasn't been deeply impacted by the attrition. They say they want a clearer organizational structure moving forward. Doopy says after the study, they're looking to see how they can work with what they have now. One thing it doesn't include, any impending layoffs or steep budget cuts.
How do you move forward? Like, what are the next steps and what's kind of the timeline?
We started right in when we got the study in end of May, early June. We started looking at it from the administrative cabinet level. That's kind of where we really looked at what was in the study, what it said, and we tried to take what was in there and tried to put that on paper from a structure standpoint, moving down through the organization. And then we've been able to consistently, after we've put something on paper, we've taken it out to the entire campus community, being all full-time faculty and staff, and heard, back from them on what they saw and what changes we need to make. And we've made changes from there. And then we've kind of moved down again, and we're doing the next phase. And we, again, have open sessions, talk through it, figure out what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. So I think right now we're looking at a timeline of hopefully having a finalized structure that we can move towards in the future. We want to have that to our Board of Trustees in December or January.
Doopy says they'll be working on changes at JCC for about 6 to 7 more months after that.
Because higher education is such an economic driver in the North Country, like it employs a lot of people and it also trains a lot of people, are you concerned about, what it's looking like out there and how that will impact, the broader economy of this region?
Well, I think if you look at our region, a lot of our roles, and we had a kind of a economic impact study, and when you really look at our region, it's federal government jobs, it's state jobs, it's very public service oriented. So absolutely, as we lose jobs in this area that are associated with education, that's a huge concern for the area. So we want students to come to college because we want them to, one, go out into the communities and better our communities, but they also are an economic driver in this area.
Dan Doopy is president of Jefferson Community College. He spoke with Catherine Wheeler.
Hochul. Governor Hochul and Attorney General Letitia James are pushing for two measures to protect teenagers online. The first prevents social media companies from collecting, using, or selling personal data from users under 18 without an adult's consent. Companies found guilty of doing so would receive a $5,000 fine per violation. The second bill bans social media companies from using an algorithm to supplement a kid's feed with content from users they don't follow. According to a press release from the governor's office, feeds with algorithms like this have been shown to be addictive and lead to poor mental health in teens. Instead, companies would be required to provide kids with a default chronological feed from users they already follow. We will be getting more context for this story from our State House reporter Karen DeWitt tomorrow morning on Northern Light.
Plans are underway to build affordable housing in Wilmington, Essex County, with a new $1.3 million grant from the state. Wilmington Town Supervisor Roy Holzer told the Adirondack Daily Enterprise that the town is working with the county's housing assistance program to build 3 townhouses on 9 acres between Route 86 and the West Branch of the Osceola River. The townhouses won't take up the whole 9-acre plot. The plan is to add a few single-family homes that would be prohibited from becoming second homes or vacation rentals. He says the townhouses will be rented to families who make at or below 80% of the county's median income, which is about $80,000 a year. The Lake Champlain-Lake George Regional Planning Board released a report this year that said housing production has not kept up with demand, and resident income levels are drastically misaligned with actual housing prices. Housing developments are also underway in Saranac Lake, Lake Placid, North Elba, Keene, and Tupper Lake. The Wilmington project is expected to cost about $1.6 million.
And the minimum wage in Vermont is increasing by about 50 cents at the start of the year to $13.66 an hour. According to the State Department of Labor, wages for tipped workers will increase too, since their pay is half of other minimum wage workers. So starting January 1st, tipped workers will receive a base pay of $6.84 an hour.
You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 8:12. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Coming up, we'll meet the textile artist on display in Lake George who sews bright, lumpy, organic, freestanding sculptures that remind her of home. That conversation coming up in just a few minutes here on Northern Light.
Northern Light is supported by AdirondackExplorer.com and AdirondackAlmanac.com, presenting daily updated news on public policy, environmental issues, and local communities in the Adirondack Park. And by Cronin's Golf Resort, offering golfers the opportunity to experience the fall foliage. Details at CroninsGolfResort.com. And it's our fall fundraiser. That means this program is also supported with your support. Listener contributions are the single most important source of income for North Country Public Radio. So give a gift right now, ncpr.org/give, or call us at 877-388-6277. This is the group Bee Children out of Canton. You can hear more of their music and other regional artists online at ncpr.org/_.
There's a lot of hard news right now, and with this next story, we wanted to take a bit of a mental health break. So last week, Amy Beireisel ran into a few artists who were up here on a plein air retreat, essentially painting outside. It was during that beautiful stretch of sunny, warm weather that we had. She's in the studio, as you know, this morning to share. Hey, Amy.
Good morning. I'm so happy to be here.
Cool. Well, so tell us about it. How did you come across these folks? Where were they?
Yes, so last week I was actually on vacation and I took a canoe camping trip on Middle Saranac Lake. The fall colors were really, out in full force. And when we were canoeing back out to the boat launch, which is right off Route 3 between Saranac Lake and Tupper Lake, I saw an artist artist set up right there on the bank. So we docked and I ran over and started chatting with him and recording on my phone. He was there because of this artist retreat run by Plein Air magazine. They do a lot of the retreats in the Adirondacks.
My name is Rick Wilson. I'm 67 years old from Indiana. I'm here in the Adirondacks painting with a group of artists. We've got 101 artists, so we have 2 painting sessions per day.
That's a lot of art. 200
paintings in a 7-day period, so that's 1,400 paintings done throughout the week.
And you said you've come to this quite a few times.
Yeah, this I think is my 11th or 12th time. In June, I painted from the top of Whiteface Mountain.
Wilson was set up on the bank of the creek looking back towards Ampersand and Seward Mountains. And when I spoke with him, he just finished roughly sketching in the landscape. It's called underpainting, and he was starting to add color.
So that's where I'm at now. I'm laying some color in. Mix up a little sky. And I like to mix a little bit of raw umber with my blue to gray it up a little bit, just to cut the chroma a little bit so it's not so garish.
And you've taken some creative liberties with sort of the landscape, right? You've painted out the dock and you've moved the mountain over.
That's right. The beauty of being an artist is artistic license. So where I'm sitting at right now, I'm at the edge of the creek. The mountain is just out of view, so I've kind of moved it to help create a better composition. A lot of people paint with earbuds. I paint with traffic noise. It's just so soothing. Especially the semis when they put their Jake brake on.
And while I was talking to Wilson, another artist actually arrived and started setting up a little station at the end of the dock. So I scurried over there to talk with Simone Roy, who is from Central Pennsylvania. She was smiling ear to ear and said she was really excited to be there.
I used to come up here to hike when I was in my 30s and fell in love with the place. But then parenting kind of took over and I haven't been back for a while. So now I'm going around and I'm painting the places that I had discovered 30-some years ago. And this is the first time I've seen this kind of color. I mean, I've never really been here in this season, but even in Central PA, we don't get color like this.
It's stunning right now.
Yeah, and we've had every single day blue sky, perfect weather, not too hot to be outside, not too cold, just amazing.
And so tell me what you're doing right now. I've been watching you sort of get set up. Tell me what all this is.
This is a tripod with an easel that attaches, very lightweight, so that I can hike into places if I need to. And the first thing I did, I was doing what I call thumbnail sketches. They're about as big as, 2 or 3 inches. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to paint in this overwhelming scene. I mean, there's just so much here. But the focal point is going to be that one pine. And then I'm waiting a little longer because yesterday I drove by at 4 o'clock and the colors were the best. So right now I'm setting up. I'm going to draw in the shapes, but I'm not going to decide the colors until a little later.
And that's where I left Roy and Wilson, just painting away in the sunshine. If you want to see their final paintings, what they actually did that day, you can find them at ncpr.org.
Oh, that's just wonderful. Amy, thank you so much for sharing that with us. That's so wonderful.
Thank you. It was, I couldn't help myself, really. I saw them and I was like, oh, it's too good. I have to go talk to them.
Yeah, what are those two up to?
Exactly.
Yes. And I think that's something, hearing this piece, it's something I so appreciate about NCPR is that, how everyone here, the whole station is striving to be a true reflection of what life is like in the North Country. I mean, it's a beautiful, wonderful place that we get to live in.
Such a special place to live. I know, and we do. We do a lot of serious investigative reporting, a lot of sort of day-to-day, but also there's the space, and we're encouraged to go out and experience this region and talk to the people who are, doing these wonderful things out there and sort of bring back these slices of life.
Yes, and it matters so much. And we know that it matters to you, too. That's why I support the station. That's why I went to ncpr.org/give and gave to contribute every month to support this. This matters to me. NCPR is so much bigger than just the people that work there. It's just so much larger, this whole thing that we all support.
And when you make a donation, you're saying, yeah, I really want this to continue. I want this to happen for years to come. I want other people to be able to listen to it. And so you can make a gift now in any amount. You can give us a call. There are people waiting, 877-388-6277, or give a donation online at ncpr.org/give.
You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Coming up in just a minute, we'll meet the textile artist currently on display at the Courthouse Gallery in Lake George. Then stick around after the show for Bird Note just ahead at 8:42. First, Todd has a look at the weather for us.
We've got clouds and temperatures in the 50s for highs today, lows in the 40s overnight tonight, and then it's pretty much the same thing right through the weekend. Cloudy skies, daytime highs in the 50s and nighttime lows in the upper 30s and low 40s, as I say, right through the weekend. Right now in Canton, clouds, 48 degrees.
The sculptures on display now in Lake George are a lot like people. They emote, they take on personalities and relate to gallery goers. Or at least that's how artist Hannah Washburn likes to think of her work. Washburn is a textile artist based near Fishkill, New York. She sews sculptures by hand using clothing and textiles from her home. She works intuitively, sort of Frankensteining bright floral fabrics together and stuffing them to make soft, organic-looking pieces. And the resulting sculptures droop and jut and gesture out. I caught up with her as she was installing her exhibit, Jog Your Memory, at the Courthouse Gallery at the Lake George Arts Project. And she says she likes to think of her sculptures as works that are growing and changing, but captured in a moment.
I don't know, that's kind of how I experience both the feeling of existing in a body, the feeling of being a person that's always changing and trying to kind of adapt and also exist as this thing that's so many different things at once. So that's where kind of the patchworking comes in of all of these different references from the home or from my life. And I think in a way they're kind of these self-portraits. They're kind of autobiographical, but I think there's also something that's, I hope, reflected back for the viewer, that there are these forms that are either at times very joyful or sometimes they are kind of burdened or both at the same time. And I think that, the way that we're also able to kind of contain so many things at once, I hope that that's something that is kind of, that you can kind of identify in it. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of the home, too, who taught you to sew?
That's such a good question because I learned how to sew at home. It's hard for me to kind of pinpoint, but definitely my mom and my grandmother and my great-grandmother were all kind of instrumental in teaching me both how to sew by hand, how to sew on the machine, how to knit, how to do kind of beading and embellishing. That was definitely a thing that was very present growing up that I just also absolutely loved doing. And I think having learned these things at home and being taught them at home rather than at school is something that really, I don't know, it really is important to me. And I think having kind of inherited these skills, and I think that so many people have that experience of learning these techniques that and have been often relegated to the home space.
Can you share a memory of a time sewing with your mom or your grandmother? Or your great-grandmother?
Oh my gosh. This is actually a memory related to my Aunt Kathy. I always felt really, and do feel really close to her because she is a very kind of artistically minded person. When we were growing up, I had a bunch of cousins on my father's side, and every summer we would all get together. And my aunt was always so great about trying to get us to do certain activities together as cousins. And I remember she was having us sew patches onto towels, so we would all have individual towels at the lake. And I just spent hours and hours and hours cutting out pieces of fabric and sewing them onto my towel. I also remember, again, this is where my dad's family is from, up in Maine, sitting with my grandmother on the front porch where all my cousins were running around and jumping in the lake, and we were just sitting and knitting on the front porch, and I was just happy as a clam. I think those kinds of things of both feeling connected to this process and loving the idea of just making something, and also that it was this opportunity to connect with people too. You get to spend time with someone when they're teaching you something, when you're making something together. Fiber art is having such a moment right now, which is so exciting, because I think seeing these techniques and materials in so many different kinds of spaces and the way so many people are working with them, there's just infinite both kind of technical things you can do, but also just so much meaning in the material. Textiles are all around us, and we wear them, we sleep in them, we're wrapped in them when we're born. There's just so much richness to that material, and it's just it infinite. I can't even, it's just so essential and feels so personal. So I've just always been really connected to it, I think, starting from a young age.
Are you in the courthouse gallery right now?
I am, yes. So I arrived this morning. I drove up from Beacon, where I live and where my studio is, and I've been installing all morning, and then I think I'll spend a few more hours getting things together, but it's definitely coming together, and it's great to be here.
As you're placing everything, how are you thinking about how you'll sort of piece the exhibit together and how you'll place all your pieces?
Yeah, there's a certain amount that you can do before being here, kind of thinking about themes and colors and shapes that go together and how you imagine the space. And I have, works that are both freestanding sculptures or sculptures that go on the wall or hang from the ceiling. So I could kind of think about what proportion of each of those kinds of works I wanted to have. But you also really can't plan too much until you're in the space and you also see the work in the space and interacting with each other, because my studio is fairly small, and also it's so crowded with my stuff. It's hard to see them in a certain way. So when you're in a gallery space, you can really start to imagine how everything fits together. And I always find the beginning is hard when you first arrive. When I arrived this morning, and I was like, okay, how do I start? Where's the first one going to go? But once you kind of start, I don't know, it just feels like putting pieces of a puzzle together. It just it starts to pick up the pace as you're working.
For gallery goers, how do you hope they relate to your work, or what do you hope they take away from it?
If you're going to come, I'm so happy to see you there, and my work will be so happy to see you there. Even just being there and being in the space and having any sort of reaction, interaction, feeling is amazing to me. I mean, my practice is often really solitary. It's, it's personal. I'm in the studio. I'm working by myself. So these moments to be able to share it with people and have people actually see it and have any sort of feeling it completes it. It completes the cycle of making it.
Hannah Washburn is a textile artist. Her work is currently on display at the Lake George Arts Project in the exhibit Jog Your Memory. Later this morning, you can see images of her work at our website, ncpr.org. You are listening to Northern Light right here on North Country Public Radio. Normally we end at 8:30, but we're going to give it a little bit more time today because we want to hear more about our fall fun drive. And here to tell us a bit is Amy Feiereisel. Hey, Amy.
Hi, Monica.